All right, folks, what's going on? Back again with Texacolor, and this is David Antoine speaking. So we're going to go ahead and go over layer 2, right, on the FortiGate, right? And I know that's a hell of an intro, right? You know, because you guys are probably thinking, why are we gonna, do any layer 2 on a FortiGate? Well, it has its benefits or what have you. It has pros and cons. Um, but what we're specifically going to touch on is the technology within FortiGate called a virtual wire pair, right? And so basically, just to discuss the theory a little bit, right? What a virtual wire pair is, right? It logically links two physical interfaces as defined by FortiGate, right? And what it does is, of course, when you configure it, what have you, traffic, traffic is only forwarded, through those two interfaces. That's it, nothing else, right? So if and of course, you'll see it when I set it up. So let's say you set up your virtual wire pair, maybe port 1 and port 2, right? And you go ahead and set that up. Only traffic, on port 1 and port 2 is only flowing through those ports, nothing else. So, we're gonna go ahead and see that. And typically, again, it's gonna be straight up layer 2, right? So those typically, right, with a FortiGate, a firewall is typically a layer 3 device, right? Whenever we set up that virtual wire pair, it's going to go ahead and be set to straight up layer 2, and they're going to be in the same broadcast domain, right? And with that being said, right, because they're going to be same broadcast domain, same LAN, whenever we set up a virtual wire pair, you guys can guess what this lab is going to be, what we're going to test, right? So I have 2 routers and 2 PCs. And so what we're going to test is we're going to see if the routers will be able to ping each other through different interfaces on the FortiGate, which again is still operating in NAT mode or layer 3 mode. Okay. So first things first, we got to go ahead and set up the virtual wire pair, what have you, and we'll go from there. So first, let's go ahead and log in. And prior to you guys jumping in, I went ahead and configured the routers or what have you. And just to show you, my IP addresses on the routers, let's go ahead, take a look. Right, so gigabit 0/0 is going to go ahead and plug into the FortiGate, and this is R2, and it has a 172.16.1.1, of course, in a /24, and of course, we take a look at R3, same thing, still in that /24 subnet. It's going to be 172.16.1.2. I could have done it another way and make it correlate with the last number of the router's name, but it's Friday Eve, take it, chop it up to me getting ready for the weekend. So let's go ahead and hop into that FortiGate. Right. So what I did prior to, you know what, I can go ahead and show you guys. What I like to do whenever I'm setting up my FortiGate, and you guys can go ahead and do this if you guys ever deal with firewalls, FortiGates, what have you, is I go ahead and configure my management interface prior to me hopping on, right? I do that on the CLI. I don't really like the GUI. I don't want, and I don't want to be far removed, right? Even though FortiGate does have the option to do everything in the GUI, still a CLI guy, relying on Old Faithful, coming from Cisco and Palo and all those other vendors I've been working with and what have you. So let's go ahead and jump in. So all this is set it to 192.168.1.101. No other configuration has been changed as far as admin port number. So, us putting in the browser HTTPS : // the IP address, that should go ahead and get us into the firewall. Let's go ahead and check it. And before we do that, let's just go ahead and see if we can ping it. Because again, just to give you guys a quick thing about EVE-NG, I went ahead and connected port 1 to my local network, right? So my PC that I'm on right now should be able to connect to the FortiGate. And we're going to go ahead and check layers 1, 2, and 3 by issuing a ping from my PC. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this. Do that 168.1.101. Cool. I can ping it to get a response back from the FortiGate. Let's go ahead and hop off. Again, one of the beauties of EVE-NG. All right, so let's hop in and let's go ahead and start our configuration if I can remember my damn password. Okay. Perfect. All right, so I'm in. All right. So let's take a look at this real quick, right? I'm looking at interfaces and I see I only have my management port set up, right? So again, the goal here is, right, is to configure a virtual wire pair, right? Basically configuring two interfaces that are going to be binded to each other that's only going to be doing layer 2. No layer 3 is happening, okay? No natting, no nothing, straight up layer 2. It's going to be, you know, in the same broadcast domain or what have you. So what should happen is once I go ahead and plug these into, you know, and I'm going to dedicate the routers to port 2 and port 3 and the PC to port 4 and port 5. So we're going to start off with port 2 and port 3. I'm going to plug those in, and we're first going to see in layer 3 mode if I can ping each other, right? So let's go ahead. R2 is going to get port 2. And R3 is going to get port 3. Okay? And so what I'm going to do, because of course I like packet tracing, I'm going to go ahead and do some packet captures, right? And what I'm going to do is issue pings from R2 going to R3 and see if that'll work. Okay. All right, got that packet capture going. And was that port 2? Yeah, that was port 2. All right, and let's do port 3. All right. Make sure we got some traffic flowing. Perfect. All right, we got traffic flowing. Perfect, perfect. All right, so that traffic flowing is flowing good. So now let's go ahead and pull up R2. Okay. So what should happen? And of course, let's just do another check. So IP interface brief, make sure interface is up. No, it is, but just, you know, trusted verify. Perfect. Layer 1 and layer 2 is up. Of course, it has IP address. So let's go ahead and try to go ahead and ping that router in router 3. And so that IP address is 172.16.1.2. Now, right, so we see the ARPs, right? And this is port 2's interface we're doing a packet capture on. So we see the ARPs coming, right? Doing an all S, right? And typically, you know, within a switch or a layer 2 device, all S gets shot out, it's going to get shot out to all interfaces, right? Except the interface that it was received on, right? And so if this was configured as a virtual wire pair, the ping should be working and I should see traffic coming through on the other side, right? On the packet capture or the interface going to R3, which is port 3, and it's not. So with that being said, let's go ahead and we're going to see this in live action. Let's go ahead and issue continuous pings. Yes, that's enough. We're going to issue that, and while we're doing that, in the background, we're going to go ahead and configure a virtual wire pair while we're doing this. So I'm going to go ahead and we are going to go to interfaces on the FortiGate, click create new, right? Click on virtual wire pair, and we're going to call this, you know, lab VWP, all right? And again, the ports we want to use is ports 2 and port 3, okay? Because again, we want to go ahead and bind these together because we want to make sure that this creates its own broadcast domain within these two interfaces. That's the great technology about virtual wire pair. It's binding two quote unquote layer 3 interfaces together while the FortiGate's running in layer 3 mode or NAT mode, and it's making it into a layer 2 interface. But the restriction is, again, with binding these two interfaces, traffic between these interfaces can only flow through these interfaces, and it can't go through anything else. Okay, so definitely keep that in mind. So let's go ahead, close. We're gonna hit OK. We don't have any VLANs, what have you. We're not doing any trunking, what have you. So as we can see, let's go ahead and pull up R2. We should see that, you know, we should see those requests coming back. Still timing out. Let's go ahead and check a few things. 1 second. And 9 times out of 10, I do have to go into the rules and set up that policy. Yep, that's exactly it. And so this is the other piece, right? And this one piece that I forgot, right? Even though we're setting up a virtual wild pair, it's running in layer 3 mode. And even if the FortiGate was running in transparent mode, which is the whole box is a layer 2 device, it's still as a firewall. So we need to go ahead and make sure we create our ACLs and go ahead and determine what we're allowing and what we're denying, right? So let's go ahead and we're telling it to show all virtual wild pairs. Of course, you can see the one that we created. We're going to create a new rule, right? And we're going to say allow all, okay? And take a pit stop right here, right? So we're making sure in this policy that we're creating, this is for lab VWP, but if we wanted to, we can go ahead and if we had multiple virtual wild pairs, we can add all of them here, right? And so the great thing about it is you can choose a direction, right, of where you allow traffic to, right? And so that's the default, right? Ingress coming from port 2, egress going out of port 3, only in one direction, right? And you can see it, right? You can see it actually in the packet captures that packets coming from dot 1 is going to dot 2. It's not going back. It's not going back. Because again, that's the default. So to get this working, right? I can also switch it to go in a reverse way. But we want traffic to go bi-directionally, right? So let's go ahead and set that there. Go ahead and do it all, right? Because of course we want our quote unquote, this small switch that we created in a sense between two interfaces. We want it to run bi-directionally. So we go ahead, make sure we got the action to accept. And you can also deny traffic. This is the great thing about a virtual wild pair is that you got, bind a virtual wild pair, depending on the type of traffic, you can go ahead and set, whatever variables or by user or by internet service, you can go ahead and deny it. But, you'll touch on those studies, of course, when you're going through your NSE4 study guide and whatnot. This is just going over a brief interview, right? So let's go ahead and take a look at this part, the firewall network options. Why would I enable that? I don't need it. So you got to go ahead and, of course, catch the firewall because sometimes the FortiGates software is too smart for its own good, right? So I went ahead and disabled that. So went ahead and dropped that since it's going to be in the same broadcast domain. We don't need to do any natting. And it's doing that because it's still in NAT mode, right? And a virtual wild pair is only able to be configured in NAT mode. Transparent mode, there's no need to enable virtual wild pair, which of course you could, but again, it's all in the same domain. So it's all good. You can also go ahead and pop in UTMs on there, antivirus, application control, IPS, and we'll touch on that later whenever we go to the security section. But with this, applying UTMs, if you guys don't know, definitely inspect each security profile before dropping it into a firewall policy or ACL, because of course it can have effects within a production environment if you don't know what the signatures it's looking for, the traffic that's flowing through, because it may be blocking traffic that's that may be a false positive within your environment. So boom. All right, so we got that. We got it set up. Let's go ahead and generate logs when it starts. Okay. Let's go ahead and say all sessions so we can just see that in the log and reports. Let's go ahead and click OK. All right, so with that being said, let's see if traffic is now flowing. Okay, so I see a reply and request. And let's go ahead and see. Perfect. All right. So now we saw all those pings come through, right? So as with any ACL, there's always an implicit deny. You don't configure anything, there's always an implicit deny. For the virtual wild pair, it's always going to be, hey, it's going through one path and it's gonna, it's not gonna go through the other. It's gonna block it, right? Even though it's in layer 2 mode, you have to, 1, create the virtual wild pair, 2, create the ACL for the virtual wild pair so that you're allowing traffic. Because again, it is still a firewall. It still needs to mitigate traffic going in and out of the firewall, okay? So real short and sweet. Again, layer 2 firewall capabilities within the FortiGate, real fun. Any questions?
I have a question for you, David. Based on topology, what topology people typically use? Like I'm not talking in general. Like what topology like you typically face? Based on like I'm talking about is it they should use the switch as layer 3 or they just use the firewall as kind of like intervalent routing?
All right, let me and Angel, I want to make sure I understand your question. So you're asking, are you, and I'm summing it up right now, are you asking when would be a good use case to use this technology, virtual WAP pair, what have you?
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay. Okay. All right. So let me get my notepad. So you did a good question because I actually implemented this during our cutover. So let me get this. Can I draw stuff? Okay. Perfect. So yeah, I can draw stuff. And let me change the color. Yeah, let me change the color. All right. So let's say, right, this right here, right?
Okay.
This gets out to the internet, but that's a Palo Alto. That's a Palo Alto, right? And so
I don't I don't see a screen.
You say you can't see my screen?
Yeah, give me a second. Put my this from my hand.
Claude, can you see my screen?
Yeah, I see it fine.
Okay. Ooh, don't scare me like that. I've been babbling to a blank screen.
I'm on a computer.
All right,
okay.
It's good now. I had to.
You good?
Refresh. Yeah.
No problem. No problem. So here's the use cases, right? So let's say, if you see the red box that I put around R2, right? So let's say R2 in a real production environment is a Palo Alto, right? And yes. Claude being the senior network engineer, the contract is coming up, it's coming up to renewal, what have you, and he's 6 months out and he wants to try different vendors, right? And so, he's got an option with the FortiGate, right? He decided to go with the FortiGate, right? But he didn't want to, bring the network down fully and having to, going ahead and configure each policy one for one while the network is down. That's going to be a long outage. You might miss a few things. And of course, he just can't afford the downtime, right? Depending on the environment that he's working in, right? And so what you can do in this sense, right, is you can go ahead and put in this FortiGate, right? Run it in that mode, easy as day, run it smooth. And you can go ahead and create these interfaces to bind to each other to where you connect one port to the Palo Alto, one port to the switch, and it's invisible, right? Because now you're just adding another layer 2 concept. But now Claude can, over time, add policies here and there. Hey, what do I have on the Palo Alto? Cool, let me go ahead and mirror it here. What I have on the what I have there, let me go ahead and add it here, right? And him adding it there, all he would have to do whenever he fully says, all right, we're going to go ahead and take the Palo Alto out, and we're going to go ahead and go with the FortiGate, is configure IP addresses, right? Okay. So you see what I mean? And that's just one use case. That's just one use case. Another use case can be exactly like this, right? Maybe you want to go ahead and segment via layer 3, and you want to say, hey, my DMZ that's pointing to the outside, I still want it to go through my firewall, but I don't want it to touch that same wire that my internal traffic is coming on, right? So I'm going to go ahead and say, hey, cool, it's going to go up this switch, it's going to go up this way. We're going to go ahead and say, hey, this switch and this DMZ network is only going through this port. That's it. It's not touching my other ports, what have you. And it's going to be segmented, right? Same broadcast domain and what have you, but we're segmenting it fully. That makes sense?
Okay. Yes, it does.
Okay. And again, there's multiple use cases, but those are just two that I know for now. And of course, the first one is what I've done in an environment, right? And so same thing. Let's go ahead and do another one. Let me go ahead and erase that. Right? And so here's another one. We can go ahead and do it with 2 PCs, right? And port 4, cool. and port 5, right? Same thing, and this is again just for practice. We go ahead and we have our port 4 and port 5, and we want to go ahead and bind port 4 and port 5 has a virtual wire pair, right? And this means that theoretically, right, and we tested the theory with port 2 and port 3, theoretically port 4 and port 5 should be its own broadcast domain, and I should be able to ping port 4 lab PC4 from lab PC5 and vice versa. So let's go ahead and set up the virtual wire pair. Cool. Let's go ahead, right? Because I'm superstitious. Checking the ports. Still ringing that mode. Still ringing that mode, looking for IP address, right? Let's go ahead and switch it to layer 2, right? So we're going to go ahead. What did I call the first one? Lab VWP. All right. So maybe original here. Man, I got a great mind of imagination. Don't judge me. All right. So we got the second virtual wire pair, right? And even though we created the interfaces, as with all things on a firewall, we can go ahead and allow traffic just like before. So let's go ahead and go to virtual wire pair policy. Let's go ahead and configure that, right? And of course, I can always just say, hey, lab VWP2, show me all the ACLs for that one, or I can just look at all of them, right? So go ahead and do create new. Allow all. And of course, what I could have done is just add VW2 to the first one, right? But of course, we're just gonna, just for the sake of practice, go ahead and just create a separate one, right? Allow all 2. We're gonna make it bidirectional. Directional. I'll allow all. We're not doing that. Sessions. Generate logs when the session starts. Cool. All right. So we went ahead and pre-configured all of this even before the host came online. So now let's go ahead, stop these packet captures. And now let's go ahead and do packet captures on port 4 and port 5. Cool. All right. Let's do port 5. Cool. All right. Now let's go ahead, turn on PC4. All right, let's go ahead and give it an IP address. IP. I'm doing this on purpose, y'all, because I want to test something and show you guys. All right. All right. And so if you guys notice, I went ahead and gave it an IP address within the same subnet as the routers. So what we should, what we should see here, and I want to get you guys' thoughts, should I be able to ping the routers from the PCs?
Yeah.
Since they're all layer 2? Why?
Again, but are they like in the same they're like in the same IP range, so they should be able to ping each other. But again,
They'll be able to ping each other, right?
But more importantly, it's your firewall rules.
Yeah. But
so first, and we're going to prove that theory in a second. So first, we're going to go ahead and prove what we built this for in the first place. see if I can ping, PC5 and see if it'll work. Cool. We see it works. Okay. All right. So now let's go ahead and take a look at this. Got my firewall rules, right? And so I got two ports that are bonded to each other, right? Two virtual wire pairs, basically they're all doing layer 2. So if I go ahead and configure a rule to say, hey, allow traffic to pass through all of these, right? It should work, right?
If you delete it?
Well, I'm gonna delete it, but I'm gonna do it as if I was, in my environment. I'll go ahead and just add it here.
Oh, just like a
right?
group.
Okay. So what do you see? Before I hit OK, what do you see here? And this goes with the theory and what have you of a virtual wire pair and the hard set rule. What do you guys see before I click OK? So
All right,
what we see, right? Go ahead.
Yeah, so we're addressing both virtual pairs within the same policy.
Okay.
We are allowing bidirectional traffic. We're sourcing it from any destination to any, and I'm using Cisco terminology right now.
No. Hey, you all good. We know what you mean. This isn't work. It's all good. Do what you gotta do.
Let me see. Services, we're pretty much allowing any ports. Action, we're accepting, and that's what I look at face value right now. So we created a policy that involves both virtual ports, your number 1 and your number 2. So I'm thinking that your PCs should be able to ping your routers under this policy here.
Angel, you agree or disagree?
Yes, because
or you waiting to find out?
Yeah. No, I actually agree with Claude because you actually instead of doing like multiple policy, you actually group them into one. Basically, this policy gonna affect whatever PC that is in port 3 and port 5. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and test it. All right. So we're here. PC4. See if I can ping it. All right. So I tried to ping R2. That didn't work. Let's ping R3. Why didn't that work? PC5 worked, so I can ping that. But why do you guys think PC1 and router 1 and router 2 didn't work? I want you guys to take a look at this policy again and again. If you guys give up, that's okay. I want and then I'll go ahead and go over the theory, right, that's behind this. Take a look at this again, real close.
Is it because you have again? That's what I'm going to say is gonna be like dumb, but is it because you have like implicit deny? But again, that's not the case in here.
We got to allow. So this is right before the implicit deny, so we're fine. What else? I'm gonna give you a hint. Take a look at
the ports.
What about them?
So bring up the topology again. Okay, so that's port 2 on that router. That's port 3 on that router. Port 5 is down here. Port 4 is down here. Okay, now go back to the policy again. Okay, so what I'm looking at, and based on the visual of the topology, it looks like the traffic between port 2 and port 3 is isolated between themselves. And port 4 and port 5 is isolated they're still bi-directional, but they're still isolated between themselves, if that makes sense.
Exactabundo. Okay. Perfect. Excellent. Right. So remember the theory, and Angel, you know, again, I'm gonna give you some grace because you weren't here when I was first explaining the theory. With virtual wire pairs, right? It binds two layer 3 interfaces together because again, you only can do virtual wire pair in NAT mode, right? Okay. You can do it in transparent mode, but barely used, right? You bind two interfaces together, right? To where they, you know, they can go ahead and create, you know, a switch port, right? That's bonded to each other. And it allows two hosts, two networks to become, you know, to be on the same broadcast domain, right? But the thing is, the hard set rule is those traffic between those ports can only flow through those ports and nothing else. They can only flow through those ports and nothing else. I don't care if I make a policy just like this. Doesn't matter. The hard set rule is if I have a virtual wire pair that's binding port 2 and port 3, I don't care if I add, you know, another virtual wire pair into the policy. Traffic can only flow in everything from port 2 to port 3. That's it.
Oh, I just realized what you did.
You see what I mean?
Yeah, because in my mind, I thought you were like grouping them together, but in reality, you're not even grouping them together. You just like.
So throwing both of those objects, lab VWP and VWP-2, basically just was smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
Yep.
I got you. Yep.
I just realized.
Right. And there's there's so many, you know, security pros and cons with this, right? Because again, Claude or Angel can be like, hey, perfect. Traffic for, maybe we're working at a school, traffic for the teachers and the students are going through, you know, this virtual wire pair and that's it, right? And traffic for, you know, for my on-premise hosted, you know, website is going straight through, you know, this port that's on the router that's dedicated for another, you know, ISP. I just want it to flow through here, and it's totally segmented.
Okay.
And again, that being in the middle is doing, you know, it's being, you know, ISFW in a sense, but not really, right? It's doing, you know, that layer 2 and say, hey, we're doing the handoff here. We're still going to go ahead and scan your traffic, because what Claude and Angel can do is within the virtual wire pair, add those UTNs, web filter, antivirus, application control. If something looks fishy, FortiGate's going to say, hey, cool. Hey, I see somebody trying to come in through our, you know, virtual IP, right, facing the outside, but we're going to block this traffic. So at layer 2, we're going to go ahead and block the traffic. We can still see layer 3, right? And if things look, we're going to inspect the whole payload. We're going to go ahead and drop it. Sorry, you're out of here. That's the powerfulness of a virtual wire pair.
So theoretically, go back to your topology again. So in order to have had PC4, PC5 talking to router 2, router 3, ports 2 and 3 or 4 and 5 would have had to have had maybe a layer 2 switch attached to them with those devices all connected. So into that switch. I got you.
Yep. 100%.
That would have been the only way to work around that. Okay.
That's been the only way. Because again, the ultimate rule with virtual wire pairs, it's only binding two interfaces together. I can't put port 2, 3, 4, and 5. I cannot do that. Port 2 and port 3, locking them together, bridging, you know, two broadcast domains. That's it.
Okay.
That's it. And that's it, man. That's it, folks. You know, it's all good. Real quick.
Good.
That's it, man. Again, we're starting with everything, right? With the CCNA and of course with the Fortinet stuff. We're starting at the bottom of the OSI model. Start at layer 2, and this is for the FortiGate. This is with the last section about layer 2. And well, you know what? I take that back. We do have to do. I do have to demonstrate for you guys spanning tree on the FortiGate. So we'll go through that. But again, hopefully y'all love this. Y'all had fun. And yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and post it up on YouTube, and I'll see y'all in 2 weeks.
All right.
Dope,
Thank
dope.
you.
All right, fellas. Later.
Good deal.